On this episode of Roll Your Stats, we have our first guest, John Luke Taylor, a talented DM who has been running games in our local area for over a decade. John Luke and the Creation Crew roll up their first rogue as we pick our guest's brain about what it takes to make a vibrant fantasy world. Welcome to Roll Your Stats.
Hello, welcome back. It is Roll Your Stats. It's a character creation cast. It's me, it's Trevor. We also have Peyton.
Hello.
And Michael.
Hello.
And as a special treat, we've got our first guest today. We've got my man, John Luke Taylor, with us.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm delighted to see what's going on.
Fantastic. Dude, thank you so much. It was real short notice, so I appreciate you just being excited and being willing to come on and have a chat with us.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it.
Well, just whenever you pitched me the idea and the fact that I've played games with at least two of you almost half my life, it seemed like a great idea, and I'm happy to be here and support what's going on.
That's true. That's why we kind of wanted you to be one of the first people that we wanted to get involved with this. We know that you've got like over 15 years of tabletop experience, and you've had a consecutive 2-year-long campaign of Godbound that you ran. So I hold your opinion and your thoughts on tabletop in high regard.
Well, the feeling is definitely mutual, and everything I've heard about Peyton here is great, so I'm always open to hearing some new ideas. I've played in some games of yours and Michael's before too, and learned a lot from you guys as well, so anything I'm putting out there is also thanks to you guys as players and DMs yourselves.
There's a lot of love in this podcast right now, and I'm here for it.
It's
Very much
warm.
All right, well, I say we lean right into it. Let's get to making a character.
I love doing that. I'm surprised we're not making a character right now.
One thing before we actually dig into the character, I want to do one last call out because we do have one other additional person involved with the podcast. I'd like to give a big shout out to Faye. You can see all of her artwork in all of the stuff for the podcast. She's been doing all of this great stuff for us, and everything looks fantastic. We appreciate everything that she's done. You can also reach her at Faye from the Faye on any kind of social media platform if you want to take a look at her art. So once again, Faye, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Faye.
Thank you, Faye. Also, if you want to see all of her artwork that she has done here for the podcast, you can check us out on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.
She even helped make this sweet dice box that I'm going to use to roll my stats in. Am I allowed to say that this early? Can I say those words?
Oh no, I think you spoiled it.
Oh no. People didn't expect that to
Title of
happen.
the movie.
They didn't expect it. Oh, see, maybe that's better though. It's completely unexpected. It's what this whole thing is about. You know, we're moving into let's make a character. Let's go into something unexpected. Let's roll some dice.
All right. Which one of these need to hit the box first?
All right, so we're going to use the classic table that we've been using this whole time. We're going to start with a d20 to determine the race of your character.
All right, here we go. It's cocked. Blessed run. Okay. Have a 10.
10, Aarakocra.
Air of the Burb. All right. We love free flight.
We love free flight. We've got another winged, feathered addition to the crew.
Tonfa would be proud.
Tonfa would absolutely be proud. John, we've just kind of spilled out the names of these characters as they've come along, and we want to give that honor to you for your character. So at any point in the middle of this, if you feel the name, if you feel inspired and it comes to you, just spit it out.
There are probably going to be some background behind the name, random name generators going on amidst this, but we'll see.
It's the cogs moving behind the scenes, yeah.
Yeah, it's I really like names, but I'm not super great at coming up with them, so I'll use generators pretty frequently to make my life easier.
There is a lot of I don't know. There's a lot that goes into a name. There's a lot of power in names.
Yeah. And there's
I feel like the name of a character is one of the most driving forces of who that character is.
Do you guys feel like a lot of times you like have a name in mind and then you build a character that comes off of that, or is it the opposite, that the character and what their personality is like and what they go through kind of leads to a name for you?
I would easily say that the majority of the characters that I create, that I come up with, that I really enjoy, they start as a name. That's what they are. They are a name first. They are a title. They are maybe a cool sentence or a word that I want to use, and then it's a story that pans out from what I want to see of them.
I can agree with Michael on that one, just due to our last episode, with Aurora. That, like, it hit me almost immediately, and it's like, yep, that, like, Aurora, she's from the Icy Baron, so it just all kind of flowed just straight from the name.
I think I am decidedly on the opposite end of the name spectrum. Like, names
That's fair.
almost always come, like, mid or in process for me. There have been some exceptions, none that I can think of right off the top of my head, but usually there's like a motive and then like sort of like the character sort of like background arc pre-story depending on the game, and then after I've got like my class and all that, usually somewhere along that way I'll get a name after I get like a general vibe.
And that's awesome to see how your creation of a character starts. That it's always cool to see different perspectives on how everything starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you, John. I feel like I almost put myself like in the character's shoes, and then it's almost as if I hear someone say the character's name that sort of, that helps me sort of kind of pinpoint what the name should be. It always comes as to like an accessory to who they are.
So speaking of figuring out who they are, as far as like non-standard races for 5e, anyone know about these birds? What's the deal with Aarakocra? Someone give me the lore dump. They can fly. They look like big bipedal eagles. That's about all I got.
Okay, then let's look into what makes Aarakocra so unique. Let's see what they have for their class abilities. There are 2 different kinds of Aarakocra you could choose to be. You can pick the layout from the Monsters of the Multiverse, or you can pick the layout from the Elemental Evil Player's Companion. The Monsters of the Multiverse give you an ability score increase. You can put 2 points into one score and 1 point into a different ability of your choosing. You are a humanoid still, and the size of an Aarakocra is medium. They have a 30 feet walking speed, and because of your wings, you have the power to fly. You can't use medium or heavy armor, but you do have an advantage when it comes to movement over the other races. Another thing that Aarakocra have are talons. They have the innate ability to attack with their talons for 1d6 plus their strength modifier. They do slashing damage. They also come with the ability Windcaller. At 3rd level, you can cast the Gust of Wind spell as a trait without any material components whatsoever. Once you cast this spell, you can't do it again until a long rest. Finally, Aarakocra most commonly speak, read, and write Common. If your DM agrees on some other language, that is perfectly fine, but most often they speak the layman's tongue. If you want to do the Elemental Evil Aarakocra, they have an ability score that goes strictly 2 into Dexterity, 1 into Wisdom. The average maturity age of an Aarakocra is 3 years old.
Swift. Look at those.
Yes.
Those birds get right up to it. But
compared to humans, Aarakocras usually don't live much longer than 30 years.
So wait, okay, hold up. I feel like that's important because, humans always get the, from the dwarves, from the elves, these short-lived races, are Aarakocra, are they taken in even harsher regard by the long-lived races, or do they have some, weird respect thing for different reasons associated with them to distinguish them from, the monkeys.
That's a really, really interesting concept to bring up, because you see that aspect of like you said, humans are looked down on because of their short lifespans comparatively, and so then what happens to these creatures that are, a blink of an eye, just a bug? So would they consider them to be?
They can fly, so that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
They can fly and they're 6 feet tall. That is.
Like, do you need to live long when you can live bright?
Yeah, you can explore so much more than on foot. So, you could experience more in 30 years than some can in 700.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh,
Also,
my goodness, that is already a direction to run with.
It is.
definitely should have known, but the class choice will be important since you can't do medium or heavy if you want to take advantage of that flight. So
Interesting. What's our other option with Elemental Evil?
Rounding out the Elemental Evil profile, their base land speed is 25 feet. They stand roughly 5 to 6 feet tall. They have thin, lightweight bodies, weighing between 80 to 100 pounds. Their flight speed is set at 50 feet, but again, you cannot use that while wearing medium or heavy armor. Their talon profile is a little bit different. You are instead just proficient with unarmed strikes, and you deal 1d4 slashing damage on a hit. And then for languages, they speak, read, and write Common, Aarakocra, and Auran.
what is an Auran? Is that like wind, plane, air?
That sounds way smarter than the idea that I thought of, which was just collective bird talk.
Just squabbling in the trees.
Interesting. So I guess I think that I will choose what is it? Not the Mordenkainen, but the
Monsters of the Multiverse.
Yeah. I would like to go with the Monsters of the Multiverse option, if only because I like stats that can go where I want them.
I see. Just so you can kind of determine you get to play.
Yeah.
Well,
Prioritizing that flexibility.
yeah. Let's move on to the next pivotal part of your character, the gender. So we roll a d6, and 1 to 2 male, 3 4 female, 5 6 non-binary.
Alrighty. I got a 5.
5 6. So we've got a they.
That doesn't seem all that wild for maybe a more monstrous looking kind of race. They might not put nearly as much emphasis on he, she, him, her. Why? They can all just be who they are. When you live so short, what difference does it make exactly what gender you are?
Wow.
Yeah, you don't need to be labeled with identifiers kind of thing.
Wow, that's really interesting. And that's kind of like just one of those cool things that can just potentially inform a little bit about the culture that they come from, which just, that trickles down. That's just really neat.
Well, and also if you want a fluid angle, then, plane of air. It's a lot of shifting, fluidity, and
Oh, I really like that. Yeah, I like the idea that it's sort of like determined on, the wind blows hot, and then that's like a more, like a more masculine thing, and then, it's like like you said, they shift as the weather does.
It actually reminds me, if you guys will allow me, probably I guess the first random other game that I've played tangent. There is a game called Under Hollow Hills, and it is a very Fae-inspired game. And it is about being in a circus that goes between the human and the Fae realm, and it has one of the most novel ways of a gender that I've seen in a game, where your character has 5 aspects that, as the GM tells you that things shift from spring to summer or vice versa, different things about your character can change. And those things is gender, because Fae are ephemeral beings. It is very unsurprising for a phase like winter, version to be a he, a she, or a they, and then it may be the same in the other season, but it's just as easy for it to change. So in the spring, you may be a 6 foot tall, Chad Moose Man, and in the winter, you may be, a more slight Fae of a snow leopard or something to that effect. It's the Fae, so they can be whatever they want.
what a freeing concept.
Yes.
What a opening kind of concept that gives you such mobility with a character to not feel locked into a personality type or who you are or who you were in the moment that you made that character. Instead, as you change as a person or want to do and experience and see other things with your character, that gives you the avenue to be able to just open up and let your character be who you want them to be and not kind of who you locked them into when you first created them.
It's also important to note that in that game, you don't level up in the traditional way. Have a sort of static number of skill points or attribute points throughout the game, but whenever those seasons shift, you can raise one score up by 1 and lower another by 1. So you are still constantly sort of moving up and down depending on any seasonal shifts that may be transpiring.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
And what is the name one more time of that game system?
Under
Hollow Hills. I will certainly have to look into that.
Yeah, that might be something that we do a little bit of a dive into at some point in the future.
I do not know how to pronounce this individual's name, but it is by Vincent Baker and Meguey. I'm sorry, Meguey. I'm sorry, person. You made a very fun game. Vincent Baker.
Thank you, McGuay.
Thank you, McGuay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think it's time to move on to the biggest role of them all, I think, our class.
Alrighty.
So get you a D12. Fetch you your D12.
My D12 has retrieved an 8.
An 8. That makes you a rogue, my friend.
Oh, we are cooking. We are cooking. So what does wind collar do again? Please remind me. That determines the plot of our cook. That's some interesting seasonings. We got saffron for this.
Ooh, expansive.
Wind Caller. Starting at 3rd level, you can cast the Gust of Wind spell with this trait without requiring a material component. Once you cast the spell with this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast this spell using any spell slot you have of 2nd level or higher. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is your spellcasting ability for when you cast Gust of Wind with this trait, chosen when you select the race.
Alrighty. That's some fun future shenanigans for this individual. Alright. Alright, yeah, I'm excited for Rogue.
An Aarakocra Rogue opens up so many possibilities because with that class, you aren't necessarily locked into the medium or heavy armor option. This really, really lets you use your flight.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what's better than being a skill monkey? Skill monkey who can move vertically with relative impunity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now that we have class, is it that time?
I'd like to dig into Rogue a little bit, just to kind of see what comes along with being a 1st level rogue. So we're gonna have actually, now that I'm really looking at this, it's going to be some of these things like your hit points and all these things are going to be determined by your skill modifiers. So I think you might be right, John. I think it might be time to roll your stats.
Roll your stats.
Roll your stats.
Does it change every time?
It does.
We're playing around with that.
Until we find like a good harmony and C sharp to hit.
Yeah, So I'm also reading in the background a little more about Aarakocra. Apparently they don't really like elemental earth. They're not fans of gargoyles. Serve the Prince of Earth. Interplanar war history going on here. Tribal in nature. Colonies.
This is a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Birds and dirt fighting each other until the sun goes out.
Maybe the dirt doesn't appreciate that the birds take its worms. Maybe that's where this comes from.
I wouldn't put it past them. Maybe the original sin does lie with the birds.
I like this so much.
How dare they fight the sky?
In fact, maybe the Earth didn't like Aarakocra so much that they kicked the Aarakocra clean off, and that's how they got their flight to begin with.
What? They reversed gravity for them and said, "No, you cannot step foot on us."
Maybe it has something to do with an Earth Ganassi and the Aarakocras.
Also, just going off what we were already saying earlier, I was looking at the names for inspiration, and it does note that the Aarakocra names are actually just clicks, trills, and whistles, so most people are just like, no. But the name list is viable for either gender, actually. So all of the names for Aarakocra seem to be
Let's go.
non-binary in nature.
It's perfect.
Fits perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. That being said, I still have no idea. But
Actually,
we're punching rocks.
ooh, and we
You know
did.
They don't
You're
seem
so-
to really do surnames either. At least not as far as I can tell, but I'm sure, you can do as thou wilt and all that.
You're so right. And now that you say that, there are still things on our initial table that we need to roll. We need to get our alignment and our 2 personality traits.
Oh, ho ho.
Really, the meat and bones of how the character is going to behave.
Right. This is like where we really got into it with Brachus. So how could I forget?
All right. Well, what am I? Is this are these D6s or
Roll us a d10 for our alignment.
3?
3 means you are lawful evil.
Oh, fun.
Ooh.
Lawful evil rogue. That's
That makes
exciting.
sense.
And then personality? Kind of what branch of lawful evil are we going?
I know that's interesting, especially for a character that's that doesn't interact with society, I guess, as normal people would, and comes from like a tribal society. So what exactly does it mean to be,
I'm sorry, did you just ask what branch this Aarakocra is standing on?
I did. It was not intentional, but I'm happy that the natural pun is just flowing. That's a good sign.
That went right over my head.
We're really spreading our wings here, so now I'm going to look for those opportunities. So thank you for opening that up.
Oh my god.
How many bird puns can we fit in the episode?
All right,
And
so
we're just pecking the dirt on this one.
oh my gosh.
Really putting all our eggs in one basket.
I feel like we're going to be so fun and lighthearted and then immediately delve into an awful, evil bird character.
Murderous.
Maybe I'm just collecting taxes.
No, we already rolled that character.
Oh, interesting.
Check out episode 2 coming out soon.
I will.
Oh man. Okay, so John, if you will do us a favor and roll 2 d20s.
2. Do I need to tell you what they are in order, though? Or
No, you can tell us. Just roll them together and tell us our two numbers. 17 and 3. That means we have impulsive buyer / spender showing its face again. That's one that's come up. And then 3 is fearful.
birds do love shiny things, and they don't like being aggressed. That's true. These are just basic truths. My bird is a bird. That's what you're telling me.
Oh, don't get us started there. That was a close one.
Interesting. So, impulsive spender / buyer and fearful. So, maybe that's where the lawful. There's some order there to try and take the reins back on this scary world. We're getting somewhere. We're fleshing out a spirit at work here. And
I agree. I think those two qualities go hand in hand.
I actually, if I may, I think it kind of says the opposite, which I think will make for an interesting kind of experience and experiment here, because whenever I see impulsive buyer spender and then I see fearful, like those things conflict to me, because I see someone who walks into the store and then they're impulsive about buying something, but then they would immediately be like suspicious of all of the deals or something.
I don't think they're necessarily connected in that capacity.
I see.
Or-
His fearful could be directed at someone specific, like the elementals or something like that.
Or this character became a rogue and is just amazing in the shadows because they're fearful of certain situations.
Yeah, healthy fear as a rogue sounds like a good thing. Also, just based off what I've gleaned from the Aarakocra, tribal doesn't really seem to denote much of like a buyer spender lifestyle. So perhaps this Aarakocra isn't meshed up with their home turf. Is sort of the vibe I'm getting.
Okay.
It can definitely depend. My savviness is not where it needs to be, but my go-to thought for a sort of tribal society isn't a lot of like commerce in the sense that supports having big spenders, a lot of impulse buying.
Maybe this Aarakocra left its flock. It's a murderer without a murder.
Hey, there are different kinds of lawful evil. We don't know if I'm a murderer yet. Hold your horses. Maybe
This is a
I'm
lawful evil crow.
Maybe I'm a simple blackmailer.
Maybe this character lives in the same village as Tonfa. So,
Does Tonfa need blackmail?
so a little background on Tampa. So his village is, I mean, a Kenku village that does not actually go with their natural traits of being a Kenku. They don't like to steal. They kind of see it as like an atrocity worse than murder. So maybe this Aarakocra has left their tribe and has joined this village and is almost not looked down upon, but kind of looked sideways at due to this being a majority of a Kenku village.
I mean, if the Kenku have the goods, I think that's one of the important things I need to determine is like, what is being impulsively spent on? Is this just a sort of manic reaction to the fear and the anxiety, or is this some sort of addiction, otherwise decadent?
Yeah.
You know,
I see.
I'm so with you there.
I almost feel like, I mean, going with the spirit of the show, I feel like it's something I should roll for. Like, do I need to pull out one of my? I have blades in the dark tables for this. I can retrieve.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got something that'll work, that sounds fantastic.
What if this character's fearfulness and like impulsive buyer habits are because they're a prepper?
Ooh.
A prepper, like elaborate.
Well, you know, there's always a doomsday scenario coming around, and for
Like
a
a
race
doomsday
so
prepper.
short-lived, for a race so short-lived, I'm sure they are constantly fearful of annihilation.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't even considered that. That's interesting. Because whenever I was kind of going on what John said about what if they're, you know, they're fearful and suspicious of other people because they're paranoid, because they're a drug addict, and what they're impulsive in buying is more drugs.
Hey,
Oh,
if
damn.
you're only living for
That's-
30 years, you might as well live it up as much as you can.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to what Michael was saying too, of them being like, I have a limited amount of time. I need to make sure that I use it wisely.
Fearful of their mortality.
So here's one thing I'm seeing. I'm seeing something in the vaguely neurodivergent, obsessive compulsive traits. That's what I'm seeing. Some tendencies to try and re-exert some control on this wild world, all this wind going every which way, making all this weather's too chaotic. This Aarakocra does not jive with it.
Interesting.
I could absolutely see a lawful evil crow being fearful like that.
All right, I'm gonna roll 2d6 for this Blades in the Dark table that is basically just a generator for interest for a character. And so I've received a 2 and a 4. So that's interesting. The interest is forgotten gods. So that to me might mean that this crow, Aarakocra? Is it Aarakocra?
Aarakocra. Yes, sir.
Aarakocra.
So has this sort of nascent obsession with these gods that may or may not, exist anymore, and just collecting old lore, spending even on like the faintest sort of tabloid level of reference.
Oh, I see.
I think we should add this table into our normal stats here.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I don't know if they all mesh with typical D&D, but I'm sure you can adapt them in some capacity. But yeah, I can definitely send that to one of y'all. So I'm getting some ideas of what to do on name. I don't always do this. A lot of the time, to kind of preserve the aspect of, none of us choose our name, and sometimes I like to do that with characters. But when I don't, I'll usually just search based on meaning, like etymological, background. So if, for example, a character is particularly passionate or something, finding a name that relates to joy or passion or fire, if you want to get a little more esoteric.
Yeah, I like that too. That's really interesting.
So what's next?
At this point, I think it's really no fake outs this time. Time to roll your stats.
I don't know if I can trust this anymore.
I know.
So 46 dropped the lowest?
That's correct.
Is this tradition?
As is tradition, my friend, and I will keep tabs of the numbers for you.
Okay, but what if I picked up my dice and one ran away from me? What if that happened?
Then that's what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to
Okay.
drop the lowest.
Okay, it fell in my pocket. Alright. First number is... we have 10.
10.
14. Okay. We're staying above 10 so far.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Oh, that's a spicy roll in the good direction. That's a 15. This Aarakocra's looking good. 12. How many is that? I just like rolling the clicky clacks.
That is 4, so you got 2 more, my friend.
16.
There it is.
Wow, these are some strong rolls.
Oh, we have one that is landed on top of its friend. Oh, okay, that's a problem. So when I rolled, it was heavy enough because these are metal die that it knocked one over, and I don't remember what that one was before. What do?
Do a fresh roll.
I would just say roll again.
Okay. I will roll again, which is sad because that was a pretty good roll. Okay. 14. So,
Wow.
we got some pretty compelling stats for this individual.
Wow.
They're gonna be a true monster.
Yeah, explosive out of the gate.
At level 1, holy cow.
Peyton, could you go back down the line and give us those numbers one more time?
Yes, so we are looking at a 10, a 14, a 15, a 12, 16, and 14.
My goodness, this is going to be a powerful bird.
This bird is gonna do as it wishes.
This is the reason they are the Aarakocra.
Yes, absolutely. All right. And with Rogue, that gives there are a lot of shenanigans at work.
Wow.
Yeah, I like the, there's a lot of options as to how you want to approach dealing with combat with this character. Where do you want to focus?
Hold that thought. Do we roll for background? Because if we do, I would like to do that before stats.
That's interesting. The other times we've just done sort of what came along with the character, but if you want that to be random, I am all for it.
Oh, well, it doesn't have to be random if it's normally chosen, but if that was random, I would have liked to do it first for inform the direction.
I think it was more so chosen because we've already had kind of a very solid idea between us throwing ideas back and forth. But I am here for also rolling the background and then because that might tell you where this bird came from, what turned it evil, what turned them evil.
It's just really it's a perspective thing.
Every time someone says evil, I think of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy from SpongeBob. Evil.
Evil's just like being really selfish in D&D, right? Isn't that the barometer? Just whether you're selfish or altruistic? Not necessarily murdering everyone.
No, D&D has the cruel system of if you're just born a different race or the wrong kind of person, you're categorized as evil whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
Hello,
and then we go back to even older D&Ds, and then it was just plainly evil. There's just plain of evil. Planescape is a game that I should have played, but probably will not. It's an old CRPG, but that's another tangent for another day. Well, okay. So let's pick where some stats go, right? I think first things first. I think that 10 is going smack dab in strength. I'm a bird. My bones are hollow. I'm not gonna be a strong rogue. That's not what I'm going for.
If I could maybe pitch an idea, Aarakocra, they do have the Talons capability that you can make the unarmed strikes dealing 1d6 plus strength with your feet. What if that was their avenue for sneak attacks?
Ooh. There's something to be said there, but the problem with that for me is 1d4 is just really. I don't normally tend towards maximum min-max, but a d4 is pretty minimal without being a monk or something like that.
That is the elemental evil side had the 1d4 slashing unarmed. The monster side is 1d6 plus strength.
Oh.
So I don't know if that shifts the scales any.
It does make some difference. I'm just so attached to your strats, but maybe we should diverge.
Well, you do have, a perpetually light being, and rapiers are light, they're quick, so who's to say?
But it is definitely the easy choice. I can't remember any sort of. it's Ranger and Fighter that do 2-weapon things for the most part, right?
Yes, I think there might be a subclass of Bard that would also give you access to the dual-wielding fighting style, but for the most part, that is right up the Ranger and the Fighter's alley.
All right. So I think I'm going to go about this the opposite way. From instead of starting at strength, I think we know that 16 is going to Dex. I think that goes without saying. Whether it gets the +2 remains to be seen, but that 16 is going to Dex.
I'm glad you are keeping in
it.
mind your additional ability score increases.
I think to represent my hollow bones, I think the 10 is actually going to go in Con. And I am seeing this particular bird as the wily sort. And to go along with their fishing for old lore and information, I think that 14 is actually going to go in Charisma. Because who doesn't love a rogue that can sub as the face?
Classic. It leaves us with a 15, a 12, and a 14.
I think that I don't necessarily know that this is the. This is an interesting question. Do I want this bird smarter than it has common sense? I think the 15 is going to go in Wisdom because I like a rogue on their toes, spotting traps or telling when people are lying, that sort of thing. That insight, nice and keen.
That makes
You have
sense
two
to me.
12s.
15, no, you've got a 12 and a 14.
Oh, well then I think that 14 is gonna go in strength after all, in case I do want to use my talents. I don't need to be smart. And I'm still smarter than average because this bird is busted.
Yeah.
This is a busted bird.
This is a busted bird.
So I think I get +2 and a +1, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's get that whiz to 16. I think that's important. And I think I'm actually going to go against my instincts, and I'm going to put the 2 in the Charisma.
Whoa.
This bird is telling people what's up. This bird is getting stuff done. You want to listen to this bird. This bird is letting you know what's good for you.
Talk about them forgotten gods.
Would you like to join? Look, have you ever wanted to be your own boss?
Of course.
What's more lawful evil than a pyramid scheme?
Oh.
I love where this is going.
What is more lawful evil than an MLM Aarakocra convincing you, if you just sell these knives, you can make so much money?
What if it's not even like looking for money? What if it's like the more knives you sell, the more blessed by the god you'll be?
Yeah, when I eventually get in contact with these forgotten gods, the dividends are really gonna pay off.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think this Aarakocra rogue is actually a cult leader
Buy into these bonds.
with a non-specific deity, and that is why I'm scavenging all this forgotten god lore, looking for the perfect one to really take this cult to the moon.
Wow.
Wow.
And for every cult member you recruit to the cult, you move up. What is it in Scientology? The levels? Yeah, you can move up a level.
So then this is a character that spends all their money as fast as they can get it, and to get more, they scam people.
Correct.
Wow.
They quite literally sell them false knowledge of old god.
Yeah, I collect the real knowledge and purposefully skew syllables so that rituals can't be performed correctly.
Oh my god,
Wow.
that actually opens up so many possibilities. What if this character is always in search for old rituals, old hymns, and callbacks to these gods, but he keeps that knowledge, and then he sells that knowledge, but he sells that knowledge falsely. It's just a hair off so that you need him to finish it.
Wizards love forgotten knowledge, but
Oh
they're
my
dumb.
gosh.
They're dumb because wizards, high int, low whiz. They can't tell these bird lies.
What if they are always outside of like a large like college, a large studying town or something like that, just giving out and selling this information?
Oh, absolutely, because I can't be around the tribe anymore. They've gotten wise to my bullshit. Can I cuss on this show? Is that allowed? Do I need to cut it down for content?
Yeah, I have this like really distinct mental image in my head of the wizard in his tower doing his experience, whatever, and then this Aarakocra flies up to their window and is, hanging on the outside of the window like, oh, hey, you'll never guess what I just learned.
And I will tell you for a price.
That is exorbitant. That
So-
you will regret.
So then we also have that other personality trait of fearful. So then what are they fearful of?
Being caught.
Okay.
Being caught or accidentally interacting with the wrong forgotten god and being smitten. I think that they are also just generally sort of a fearful, anxious entity.
They have that aura of nervous energy because they're always so flighty.
Yeah.
It is almost difficult to maybe keep in long-term contact with this Aarakocra because they're flighty. They will come in, they will give the information that they have, they will sell the information that they have, but then they are gone again. They don't stick around for very long because they're fearful. And so they are very, very flighty. They're very often away.
This character is starting to almost remind me of like the old western like snake oil peddlers a little bit, but with instead of snake oil, it's like forgotten knowledge, knowledge of the forgotten gods and rituals and stuff. So
Yeah.
they're like, all right, sell this and I'm out.
But you could probably cure your skin condition with this. Absolutely. Turns out this is the forgotten god of skincare.
Yeah, with this
I got
blessing.
Be sure to exfoliate.
Absolutely.
I know that we kind of build these characters to maybe be played at the table, but this is really giving me the vibe of an NPC again. This is giving me the vibe of almost an antagonist to the party, or maybe a rival that is maybe just one step ahead, that's always doing the knowledge, the research, like delving
Wow.
into these ancient secrets and spoon feeding or dropping these breadcrumbs along to a party.
Yes, sir.
To get the party to do their bidding without having to directly interact with them because, again, they're fearful.
Yes, sir. I think that's spectacular. Yeah, and that's just such a good position for them to be put into, to string the party along, to just be drip feeding this information that's, just slightly altered to give them something to go off of, but not give them enough where they can actually figure it out.
So I would like to drop the bomb at this juncture that I do not know if this is this character's real name because it is not a bird name.
Let's
And
go.
Going with the air of this character right now, I think the name that they go by is Verity,
Verity.
which is an English word that just means truth. From the Latin, veris, true, real.
That is awesome. And what better of a name for such a deceptive and kind of distant character than the truth.
You're so
And
right.
their real name is probably just like one of these Aarakocra names that just sounds like a real bird name, like Urk or Eek or Iki. Iki's fun. Their real name's probably Iki. I'm okay with that.
Iki is really nice, and I love the the sound of Verity. I love the sound of them saying, of course you can trust me. They wouldn't call me this for nothing.
So, I'm a rogue. That means I get to pick. Skill proficiencies. I get so many skills. We
That's
love
correct. So we can go down from the top. You're gonna get 8 plus your Constitution modifier and health. So that's gonna give you 8 health.
it. I'm okay with that. My bones are not good.
And it makes sense because if you don't want to be touched anyway. You want people to
Yeah.
get away from you.
I'm VIP. I'm at this level you just shouldn't be touched by mortals.
You're going to get light armor proficiency, proficiency with simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. You will get thieves' tools and proficiency in dexterity and intelligence saving throw.
And the skills with which my bills might be paid.
Correct. So you'll get to choose 4 from this list. That will be acrobatics, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, investigation, perception, performance, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth.
So the question that I need to answer for me is which one affects disguise checks? Is it simply deception?
Very interesting. Is deception disguise? Is performance disguise? Is persuasion disguise?
I guess that could probably be up to the DMs, how they want you to approach a situation.
I think one very fortunate thing maybe about this character then is that you have the option to choose so that you can then work that out with the DM beforehand so that you can have the stat that you want to have. And luckily the rogue could be proficient in any of them, so you're not limited to maybe trying to force yourself into the box of being the persuasion kind of disguise. You don't have to force yourself into the box of being the performance. Instead, you can pick the one that fits you best.
I think with what I've cultivated here so far, I do think I'm going to go with deception over performance. I don't think performance is Verity's bag. I think that's a little too, that lifestyle doesn't really jive with how or they like it. But if you can keep a nice list of lies straight, that's a-okay. So I think option 1 is definitely deception. And then for option 2, I think we've got to go insight. I think being able to read folks is premier in a con person. They're gonna...
I think that is quintessential to the fearful aspect is they are constantly checking.
What's more stressful than knowing that everyone's lying to you all the time?
Knowing that you're lying to them back and they might be equally as dishonest.
Correct. I do think that as far as roguery goes, I think that Verity is more of like the face social sneaker, and I might actually forego stealth and take persuasion as well and sleight of hand. I think this is the kind of rogue who's going to do all their hijinks while they're looking at you, and you're going to realize 15 minutes later the problem.
I like that. Very, very talkative, can keep a conversation going, keep your attention focused on their eyes or whatever their hands are doing as they're, touching you, tapping you, poking your shoulder in this direction, and then taking your ring off your finger while they're touching you on your opposite shoulder type deal.
I also think that Verity would take is there a proficiency, is Disguise Kit a proficiency as well? I cannot recall.
I'm not sure. I really don't know. I know it at level 1 you also get expertise as far as rogue goes, so you could maybe have that be where it goes towards that instead.
I think my understanding is with expertise I choose 2 of the proficiencies that I just chose, or a proficiency in Thieves' Tools, which in this case I am definitely going with Deception and Insight, because I want to read my marks and I want to follow on bamboozling them. So I would have a nice level 1 proficiency is +2, so that's +4, and then plus the 3 from a 16 charisma, so that's a nice +7 at level 1 to tricking folks.
Wow, that's huge.
We like that. We like that level of influence on our d20s. And of course, sneak attack.
You would definitely be the face of the party.
Possibly not the face that they wish they had.
Oh, no, but, wow, you'd be able to talk your way out of a wet paper bag.
And going off of what Michael was saying earlier about sort of trending towards NPC, I could definitely see this figure operating in a frenemy fashion, sort of Lupin the Third and the investigator attempts to...
You stole the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, because I'm imagining a lot of disguises, which I know Aarakocra are already pretty unique, but, using pigment paints and stuff to seem like different birds, modulating because eagles and magpies and all those sound very different, so practicing the vocal training to tweet differently.
Something I noticed that was a little bit interesting is that a rogue comes with the option of a burglar's pack, a dungeoneer's pack, or an explorer's pack. But if you do some looking, the entertainer's pack comes with a disguise kit.
My DM permitted. Wait, is there a background that gives an entertainer's kit? We haven't addressed the background yet.
The entertainer background comes with a disguise kit. Faceless comes with a disguise kit.
The what?
Faceless.
This is a faceless. That sounds like sorcery.
Faceless. Michael, would you like to fill us in?
Being who you are, you could never be a hero. Whether due to your class, your people, your family, or your sins, Something about you prevents you from effectively pursuing the path you've chosen. Even so, that doesn't stop you. You've left your old face behind, taking on a new persona, becoming something more. Characters with the faceless background don a disguise, literally or otherwise, as they adventure. This persona might be dramatic or subtle. In a way, though, many characters have such larger-than-life personalities, therefore this background largely focuses on detailing the hero behind the mask.
Described so far. That sounds like everything that we have described so far.
I absolutely love it when we begin talking about a character, we kind of sort the ins and outs of who they are, and then a class or a background or a personality just falls so absolutely perfectly into our laps.
So, I definitely think I would choose the faceless background. Does that give me... So, that gives me the disguise kit.
Disguise kit, correct.
Does it give me the proficiency? I said...
It does give you skill proficiencies in deception and intimidation.
Uh-huh. So, a point of order, just going off of how you guys might usually do this. So, since that already gives me deception proficiency, may I, in fact, reallocate that proficiency earlier from rogue into an alternative?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
I feel like intimidation, because sometimes you got to keep the vassals in check. It's really important that everyone listens to you and only you and not other people.
Faceless also gives you intimidation.
Oh, well, maybe I should listen better. So, in lieu of intimidation, perception. Perception's always good to have.
Perception is always good to have, just kind of overall, but then I also think that fits in with him just being that fearful, nervous guy where he's just got his eyes open at all times. You know, it makes me, it just puts in the image in my head of the bird that's making those super quick adjustments to his head as he's like using his incredibly powerful eyes to pinpoint on these specific things.
It's one thing to be insightful and know when someone's lying to you. It's another thing to hear the person coming to stab you in the back.
That is a really good line.
That gives me the disguise kit, so from the rogue aspect, I think I would just do the burglar's pack because the idea of the ball bearings and all of that sort of thing, permitting some hijinks, really appeals to me.
Oh yeah, at this point I feel like anything that can up the dastardly factor of this character.
Absolutely. And then from the rest of the equipment, I do think that the rapier is actually probably a little flashy for Verity, so I would probably just go with the short sword and then the short bow and quiver of 20 arrows. Keep it simple, straightforward.
I would say that's a good idea, mainly because this person, they are more talking. They talk to you more than they try to fight. I feel like they try to deceive you. So, I mean, you're gonna be leaving without, you're not gonna have a certain item with you when they approach you or after your conversation is over.
If fights have erupted, then I need to backpedal and let someone else in the party take over until I can get sneak attack. That's Verity's life motto.
Speaking of which, Michael, can you give us a heads up of what sneak attack is?
Sneak attack. Beginning at first level, you know how to strike subtly and exploit a foe's distraction. Once per turn, you can deal an extra 1d6 to one creature you hit with an attack if you have advantage on the attack roll. The attack must use a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon. You don't need advantage on the attack roll if another enemy of the target is within 5 feet of it, or if that enemy is incapacitated and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. The amount of extra damage increases as you gain levels in the class, as shown on the sneak attack column of the rogues table.
We get a nice 1d6 at level 1, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at level 1, when everything is a little more dicey just because of the pulls and damage, it's nice to have.
What do you guys think are various ways that a player could go about getting advantage so that they could take advantage of sneak attack like that?
There's always the classic rogue trick of doing a hide check.
I was actually thinking of that just now. There is such the quintessential, you were playing an Aarakocra, you have the ability to fly. Your hit and run is kind of what should be the bread and butter of your race. You were very flighty anyway, and you really harp on making these skirmishing kind of attacks. But with Verity, What if it's the dagger unseen that does the most damage? He hides his weapons. He is nonchalant, almost like a non-combatant entirely. So when he does attack, it's from a position where he almost just walks right up to you. He looks like a merchant. He looks like just some normal peasant that comes around. And so the knife in your back, you didn't expect because it didn't look like he was holding one to begin with.
Almost like they went in for like a handshake and then you got a knife in the gut.
But hey, it's important to know. Verity doesn't like stabbing people. It's messy.
Oh, fair enough. That's fair.
Exactly. When the sneak attack finally comes around, this might be late into combat. Verity very well might have left, observed, watched, repositioned, and then struck only once when he absolutely needed to.
Verity is also the kind of character who would probably be mid-combat trying to negotiate a deal NPCs in some capacity.
Just trying to completely stop or stall out combat.
A little talk no jutsu. A little, if you join my cult, maybe I have a better deal than your boss.
I can't beat you, but I can buy you.
Correct.
Yes.
Have
the muscle is bought.
I really appreciate making characters that don't necessarily lean into the very, very heavy damage-dealing combat roles. Finding other ways to accomplish what you're trying to get at, personally for me, always feels more fun than just swinging a sword and ending their life.
Well, there's also, Verity knows the importance of information. And if you just murder hobo everyone, that's not good press.
Of course, there's no flow of information, which means there's no flow of money.
Killing is bad for business.
It's true. The lawful, in this particular lawful evil, is the bureaucracy of a pyramid scheme at work.
Yeah, and being willing to climb that pyramid.
Oh, well, it's not even climbing. Verity started at the top of the pyramid, and everyone else is building it down, raising higher.
I see.
Build the pyramid. Build the pyramid underneath me.
Yeah, the most important part of the scheme is starting out on top and just having everyone else push you up on their shoulders, while putting other people below their feet. Depending on how you look at it, may be worse than murder. Who knows? I guess it depends on how expansive this organization begins. Which, for a level 1 character, there probably is not an actual cult, but other than the cult in Verity's mind. It's a project. It's a goal, which is, I think, another important thing to have, especially in level 1 characters, instead of having the most expansive background in the world. Simply having some sort of drive or goal that may or may not be related to the DM's particular quest in mind, just to give your character some agency outside of simply wanting to loot and do combats.
This is something that we bring up in almost every single episode. Give your character an out. Give them a reason to be away from town. Give them a reason to be adventuring.
I could very easily see Verity's initial adventure just being leaving the last place that they got ran out of.
You're just not welcome here.
Or maybe the job went really well and they just need to lay low to make sure they don't get too much attention.
And they know better than to stick around town.
Yeah, important. You gotta get your sack, move on to the next place, forge a new identity, keep them guessing. Stay on your toes.
I really like the character that has been developed here.
Mm-hmm.
I could even see that being since adventuring parties are usually likely to move around, that could be a good reason for Verity to join one, because adventure, that's what they do. They just go from dungeon to dungeon causing chaos, and Verity can milk that as much as they're able to. And they might actually have rules for themselves about not staying in places longer than a certain amount of time, so that could cause some interesting inner party conflict, and not in a crude PvP way, but in a more interesting way of, hey, we can't stay here because of X, Y, or Z, and going through that with party, discussing ways to make it work or not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Sort of saying, I've got a limited amount of time here before these people start to see through my scheme. And so, are you guys going to be in on it with me, or are you going to hem me up?
My bag of tricks only goes so far.
Very reminiscent of a water genasi I know of. Ahem.
Or maybe they've been recognized in a village or town that they're visiting, so they have to try to keep, lay low, stick with the party.
That, and how you gonna find information on forgotten entities if you don't go to forgotten places? You can't stay in the known places. Too known.
That is hilarious and poignant at the same time.
You have to go find places people don't know about so you can lie about those places after you figured out what's there.
That's fabulous.
They use their party as like a, oh yeah, I heard about this, this possible tomb or something over in this area. Would you guys want to check it out with me?
That would be an excellent way to bring, to start the campaign and bring the characters all together, is saying like, oh, we're all working for this guy, but then he ends up having to ditch, the situation with the party, and suddenly he's on the same scale as them.
I also think that there is such a ripe idea here for another member of the party to be a warlock who Verity sold some, quote, bad info to, and either through accident on Verity's part or misinterpretation that led to an accidental correct ritual, gave the warlock a patron.
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, I can't wipe the dumb grin off my face. That is so cool.
I approached you wishing to contact the god of dread, and you gave me the god of bread.
It's just...
Now I can shoot Eldritch Blast. Honestly, pretty good trade. The consequence of your patron, though, is that you cannot ingest gluten.
You come with an awful allergy.
You simply can't handle any more bread because you are already inspired with divine bread.
They're always a little sour.
Yes.
Hey.
We've shifted from bird to bread.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're always willing to rise to the occasion.
Oh, there's also something to be said for, PSA, you should not feed ducks bread, but ducks will eat the crap out of bread, so something there. There's the harmony we're looking for.
Verity stays with this person just because they can produce bread at will.
You got crackers? Sweet. We are besties. You automatically gain a level in the scheme.
Yeah.
Up to that
Vice.
silver wing.
Yeah, you get put one level higher in the pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Eat this bread of the forgotten gods. It gives you special powers.
See, it gave my friend special powers. I mean, there's definitely something there doing a riff on a communion ritual. This is truly a bread-inspired warlock.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Verity would partake every mass.
Oh my goodness.
Stressing out about something, just where do you keep the communion crackers and just going to town on the jar?
Take this in remembrance of me.
Just excited bird squawking. That's a dynamic duo if I ever heard one. The Eldritch Blast is just a foul cloud of yeast. We've accidentally made a whole other character.
We did, absolutely.
Yeah, we did. All right, well, are we gonna roll the stats for this character?
That's your next episode, tease.
Yeah, we'll save that.
Spoilers. The next person is just making the bread warlock.
Breadlock.
Their past life they were a baker, and then they found this forgotten god of bread.
Because it's a warlock, though, there's almost something to be said for just someone who is entirely unbread related in their life. They just broke rocks for a living, and then they got involved in this pyramid scheme and accidentally did a bread-based ritual.
That phone number was off by 1 digit.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, my bad. Called the wrong Dee Dee.
But they picked up anyway. And suddenly gluten in every cell.
Yeah, the blessings coming just spilling out of the phone.
New follower, who dis?
That's the thing about forgotten gods, right? If they're entities that thrive on worship and you haven't had any in a long time, you'll pick up for whoever calls.
Yeah, that's good.
You're my avatar now, enjoy.
Their body has to be like soft and doughy though.
Oh no.
Anytime someone touches them, they just kind of like indent for a little while before it kind of like rises back out.
Just a little squish.
Yeah.
Just a little squish.
They get hot. They start to expand.
What are all of the different options nowadays? I know there's infernal and well, there's so many. Lore Master.
So we've been talking about this one specific character with Verity, but one thing I wanted to specifically talk to you about, John, is in our particular game of Godbound that we are playing, that you are the DM of, it takes place on a university campus with all of these different students attending the school outside of the 4 player characters that we have. So I wanted to know, like, first off, how many other attendees of the school outside of us do you think you've created? And then what was that experience like? How do you think that's like different from creating a singular character to creating all of these characters, and then also how to make them distinct and unique and to stand out from each other and not kind of like let them have room to all breathe?
I think, just to get it out of the way, every GM is going to go through that process differently insofar as how sandboxy their game is or how much they want to like plan out if it is a more linear story. And I don't mean linear in the sense of real. Linear can be perfectly fine if that's what everyone's after, but Godbound is definitely going to trend towards sandbox. And with that in mind, and a university campus, this particular, there were several characters that I knew I had to have. Like, I knew that I had to have professors. I knew that I had to have a headmaster or headmistress of that sort. And so roles of that fashion or supporting staff did need to be filled, and just trying to head off avenues that you as players might go down to have something in the back so that I didn't have to prep on the spot. Though you can only do so much in that regard. So with that in mind, it helped me give skeletons to some of the characters already. But as far as the students in particular went, one thing I wanted to do was, for me and for all of you, provide them some realness and distinction of being where they're from. So with a lot of characters, just to expedite it, and for my own particular challenges in GMing, trying to cut down on analysis paralysis, I rolled for a lot of the students. And for some of the locations where some of the professors were from, I just left it up to dice and made tables for the most distinct regions in Arsum, which is the world of Godbound. That way, it gave me some lines to travel down the characters and gave me some paths that, just based on the background and cultures in those regions, helped me fill in the blanks for those characters. So almost sort of going at a Mad Libs approach to characters. Another thing that I really try to do with my NPCs is also try to give them, I try to make sure that my NPCs are very capable of coming into conflict. Like, their different wants and needs are going to conflict with each other, and so that is going to make them spark scenarios that are going to be interesting for the characters to either defuse or enable, use to their advantage, whatever the case may be, just so that the NPCs themselves, particularly in a sandbox game, are capable of providing some conflict or readily available events for the narrative. There is also an aspect of game number 3 or Powered by the Apocalypse, which is also another Vincent Baker, where he encourages storytellers to treat their NPCs like stolen vehicles. So you have this NPC, you have determined their wants and their needs and how they go about them, and don't necessarily define them by those traits, but use those traits to steer the character and play it to the max. If that is what that character is about, play it up, ham it up, whether that's a loud or negative, not in the sense of bad experience, but in the sense of, if that is a subdued character, make it pronounced how subdued they are and how they engage, and really letting the NPCs follow their whims, whether it's convenient or not for the party.
Right on. I think that's really, like, what stuck out to me was saying, like, giving the characters conflict between their own different motivations. That way those conflicts can kind of push or pull the party along in various ways. Like, I think that's really interesting, and that's really good advice.
I also think, especially when you have that many characters, I think there's probably like high teens, like 16 to 24 or so, like major faculty that I had sat down and made early on. It was important also just in terms of visual distinction, without giving them each 1 or 2 paragraphs of appearance, some sort of either describing a uniform, but even if it is just a uniform, how do they wear the uniform, or giving them some sort of visual tell in their appearance. That, because I don't always do images, because I can be very picky about what the internet will give me to represent a character, that I don't present it and just have to immediately say, except for this, this, and this. Something that kind of like good writers do in novels, something that a player can attach to in their head and form a decent visual, ideally, of how they see them when everyone's playing through the game and imagining it in their own way.
I see. So having like something immediately, like some kind of immediate visual for the players to attach to associate with that person.
Which hopefully, if I've done my job right, you might remember some different NPCs and have some sort of hallmark of how they appear.
No, that's so true, because whenever I think about the NPCs that you've created for this particular game, I have very distinct visual images in my head for certain ones. So that's really interesting, and I think that shows that, like, mission accomplished in that regard.
Thank you.
Something that stood out to me that you said that I really like, and I think that it is a very a very good rule of thumb across most systems, is as a DM or a GM, treat a NPC like a car you do not own.
Yep. You don't have to pay taxes on it. You really don't want to be caught with it, if anything.
Right? Drive the character fast, drive them loose, hold no attachments, and then let them go when they wreck or when they just disappear or just end. I love that idea of keeping such a kind of a distance between you and like the NPCs that you just kind of generate on a day-to-day, so that you don't make them kind of railroad a party. They don't impose their own will onto the party, so the party can explore how they want to.
And that isn't to say that there aren't characters for me that have more importance to the quote-unquote plot, but I try to keep a healthy level of distance just to avoid heading off players in a way that I think a lot of people have had ill experiences where they try to engage with an NPC or something and the DM perhaps overreacted in some way to prevent that character from being interacted with in that capacity. Whereas for me, if the character has stats, then the players can and will find some way to kill it. It might be difficult, but at the moment I have stats on them, they are engageable.
If they have stats, they can bleed.
It's true. You might have to find unique ways to make them bleed. Or maybe they're actually immune to bleeding if it's Godbound, but you can reduce hit points. I don't think Unit 87 has blood. I don't think that's true, but I like the idea. Probably some sort of weird, ultra-refined, divine fluid.
Yeah, that's honestly like exactly the perspective that I was looking for, like, you to share. Just sort of kind of getting an idea, like a lens sort of into your creative process, and I think there's some really interesting stuff there and good advice for, creating characters. And I honestly feel like we learned some really cool stuff and kind of changed things up in the whole just character creation process for Verity, like you bringing in those tables from Blades in the Dark. So like that's just awesome. That's just really cool, and it shows I think the wealth of knowledge that you have of tabletop and like various systems, and then just how those kind of inform and make really cool characters. Like Verity is very interesting, very distinct. And dude, just thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. Your insight into the character creation process, and just your ideas as a whole into a kind of a gaming system that you've been playing for the better part of 2 decades. It's valuable. It is infinitely valuable to be able to hear the ideas and mindset of someone else with that much experience.
Sorry, I didn't know. I don't know why, but in my head it was like all 3 of the people must talk and then I have to wait for Payne to talk, so I can't say anything yet. So I just continued to wait and not say anything that sounded grateful. But I really appreciate being here. And do you think it's important to note, I don't have 2 decades with Godbound, in case that's how that sounded. just about 2 years with that one, but almost 2 decades with RPGs in general in like 5 years. So that's cool. And I thought this was really wonderful. And I think this whole process also highlights how I think it's important to make characters with other people in session 0 kind of scenarios, because I don't think Verity would be the Verity that they were if I didn't make it while chatting and goofing off with everyone present here. So I'm very grateful to be part of this burgeoning project.
Burgeoning project?
No.
You know, even on your even just now with your thank yous and your kind of like ending statement, you just now dropped another knowledge bomb on us of the cohesion and kind of like the character and the story that you can build if you make your characters with your party.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, John, I do want to say thank you. You know, myself, I'm still new to, you know, tabletop role-playing, and I mean, D&D and all of this is still very new to me, and just to have, you know, someone with your experience come in and just explain how they go over their character creations, it has really helped me, and it's opened up a lot to think about for myself, so I do really thank you.
Well, I always look forward to having new people just as much as old hats at the thing, because I think they bring in a lot of novel ideas and ways to approach different systems, and usually they're also more apt to try different systems. And I am usually the person who's like, well, why don't we try this? Well, why don't we try this system, just for the sake of mixing it up and seeing how different games approach collaboratively shaping a narrative.
Super cool. Guys, this has been really good. This has been awesome. What a really fun conversation. We'll be back soon with another one. You know, this is Trevor and Peyton and Michael and our buddy John, and this has been Roll Your Stats.
See ya.